right, ladies and gentlemen, as you're all probably well aware by now, there is going to be an update to Wuthering Waves coming for version 2.2, and a special broadcast for it as well. Wuthering Waves has been on a bit of a hot streak with these, having a special broadcast for basically every single patch that 2.0 has had. And I thought that this would be a wonderful time to do something a little bit fun, a little bit of retrospection. And that is, of course, rank all of the updates that Wuthering Waves has had to date and determine which ones have been the best, which ones have been a little bit lacking, and kind of set a framework for us moving forward as we decide how to judge 2.2 based off what the game has already experienced. And so with that, we're going to be going in chronological order. There might be a little bit of movement going around as we, decide and we talk about all of the different features that were in the patches, and then we will crown an ultimate winner. I think it's kind of clear who the winner is going to be based off of course, a lot of like the critical acclaim certain versions have had, but you might be a little bit surprised by where some of the other rankings are going to be. And so with that, let's go ahead. Let's get ourselves started with version 1.0. And boy, oh boy, this is going to be a bit of a controversial one. I do believe that 1.0, ladies and gentlemen, is going to go into... Hey, I'm going to be real. I think that 1.0 is an A. I think 1.0 would have been an S if there was simply a better launch at the initial start of it. I think that 1.0, ladies and gentlemen, I'll just open up my map. I'll open up my map and I'll show you all of the stuff that was actually in version 1.0. All of this, right? This entire region, all of this stuff, Port City, all the way to the Winding Aches' Mire, that was all in version 1.0 of the patch. Guess what else we had? We had the whole Dreamless situation. We had the release of Jian and Yinlin. And then we also had, ladies and gentlemen, the Elusive Realm. The Elusive Realm was in version 1.0, if I am not mistaken. Wait, let me look it up on the wiki so that we can be 100% sure. We'll use the wiki as a bit of like a baseline for us to talk about the patch. Here we go. Let's see what we had in here. We had basically every single character in the game with all the standards, all the 4 stars, all of these weapons that were put in, all of these echoes as well, all the different Sonata sets. We had the Jian and the Yinlin banner. And of course, all of these main quests, 3 companion stories, a bunch of exploration quests as well. And of course, right? Depths of the Elusive Realm. It was here. So I do believe that when it comes to version 1.0, a lot of people are sort of like drawn away by the performance issues that people had. But let's be real here. The devs made up for it, and made up for it a lot with things like the 5-star selector, the massive amount of Radiant and the Radiant Tides, as well as the standard pulls that they gave out because of those launch issues. And as you got into like maybe at past the first or second week of the patch, it was a great gameplay experience as a whole. In terms of everything that the game provided, all of the combat, all of the features, it's not like a game like ZZZ, where ZZZ had a pretty rough launch and then also had to rework the core mechanics of the game. Wuthering Waves didn't rework anything. They basically just had performance issues that were dealt with. A huge, insane, absurd amount of compensation was given to every single player, and no core baseline mechanics of the game were modified at all moving forward. The skeleton structure of the entire like the combat, the TOA, all of these things was kept exactly the fucking same. And so you could view it as a high B, but I'm honestly viewing it more as a low A. And the only thing that drags it down, ladies and gentlemen, is the pacing of the story and the performance issues. But aside from that, I don't think anything was really that bad with it. And the compensation that the devs give more than made up for the performance issues. And you can still log in today, almost a year after launch, and still receive the compensation of like 20 standard pulls and the free standard 5-star. You can log in today and still receive the compensation for 1.0's technical issues. And I think that is something that you kind of have to attribute to 1.0 as a whole. So I do think it's going to go into A. However, maybe we can think of it as like top of B tier for now, because I kind of want to put something else in A. And that's going to be version 1.1. I think that version 1.1, 1,000,000% deserves at least an A or a very low S. But when it comes to this tier list, I really want to make sure that we're differentiating a lot between the tiers so we don't end up with a bunch of stuff in S, because I really want to reserve S for those amazing, really genuinely amazing patches. So when it comes to 1.1, version 1.1 had a lot of great additions to the game. The first one was, of course, you had Jinxie and Chang Li, who are considered some of the most popular characters that do exist in the game as a whole. People love using these units. They still use them a lot to this day. And, you know, we think of Jinxie as hypothetically one of the strongest characters in the game. And so from a character perspective, it was absolutely awesome, right? Very, very top meta stuff. Chang Li is back and much more accessible due to the addition of Brant. The value has grown over time for these units. You also had the Chang Li story quest, Immortal Blaze, as well as, of course, the amazing main story quest that entirely revolved around Jinxie, Juwei, her unlocking her power, and then moving forward from there. You also had the exploration quest of Mount Firmament as a whole, and of course, the new region, Mount Firmament. And let's be real here, guys. It was pretty big. This is the Winding Aces Mire. This is Mount Firmament. This isn't even looking at the underground areas and the verticality. Look how many waypoints there are in here. A new weekly boss as well, and a bunch of new mobs that you could farm. It was 1000%. This is one of the better version updates and one of the better map updates we've had across like the entire lifetime of the game. And Mount Firmament was a blast to explore. I think a lot of people really enjoyed it. And there was a bunch of different geographies, a lot of beautiful environments too. And it was an absolute joy for a lot of players. A bunch of new echoes as well to help streamline the farming. And one of the best parts that the devs did when it came to all of these new echoes is that they made them super easy to farm. These echoes only have 2 possible drops as 1 costs. In the past, a lot of 1 cost echoes would have 3 possible Sonata sets that they would drop. And that would mean that farming for them was a lot more RNG based than the new ones that they added. And so what this meant was that this was kind of like the start of Kuro really listening to their players, because this was a point of feedback that they got. They streamlined it and made it better for every single person. They also did a lot of QOL. I'm not sure how much you guys have been keeping up, but version 1.1 had a massive amount of QOL, with the main one being lowered shell credit cost of echoes. I don't know if you guys had upgraded echoes during 1.0, but holy moly, they were an absolute pain in the ass. They also added a bunch of tuners to all of the different event rewards and echo food for better farming. There was a lot of quality of life in here that I feel like a lot of people didn't realize, that you could turn medium and advanced tuners into higher grade ones. This was really the start of everybody gaining a lot more benefit. They also raised the level cap of the databank to 21, and that meant that every echo was guaranteed to be 5-star. That meant you weren't able to get purple echoes anymore, because at level 20 you had a 20% chance of getting purple echoes from every drop, and this just bumped it up to 100%. You also got Union XP for unlocking new echo entries. This patch was insane for quality of life, and honestly, looking back at it and incorporating quality of life into the ranking, it might actually belong in low S. We'll keep it at top of A for now, but we might move it. As a whole, I'm sure that now, after seeing all of this stuff, seeing all of the new features, it's becoming a bit more clear, right? Even streamlining the progression of the story and removing UL requirements. There was a lot of player-centric stuff going on here, and it laid a very firm foundation. This might be the one patch that's had the most quality of life in Wuthering Waves history. And so because of that, we'll keep it at top of A, might bump it up to S. Now we got version 1.2. I think it goes at bottom of B. I think it goes at bottom of B because version 1.2 was admittedly not a very feature-rich patch. And let's look at what it actually had in here. Version 1.2 had 2 new characters, which was great. Jeja was not really that exciting at the time, though. Jeja worked with 2 characters on release. She worked with Jinxie, another 5-star that ran just the patch prior, and she also worked with Ling Yang, who was the worst 5-star character in the game. And so there just wasn't really a lot for her to work with at the time, and because of that, she wasn't really that popular of a character. However, there was a free 5-star that was released as well, and Zhang Liao was and still is one of the best fucking characters in the game. And, you know, he worked and perfectly synergized with Yinlin, and the end result was a lot of people, they ended up pulling his gauntlet after getting him for free, and it was amazing for just doing things like clearing the TOA, clearing endgame in-game content, tackling holograms, doing all of the stuff. He helped streamline a lot of the end-game content and progression for so many accounts. And I think that him being free was genuinely one of the biggest assets that people could have had. You had Jedge's companion story, and of course, right, the whole situation with the Zhang Liao story quest. I would say that 1.2, while you were experiencing it, was pretty decent, but unfortunately, it was a giga filler patch. By Moon's Grace was essentially the Zhang Liao story quest, where you help him become like Santa and help people out. You run all these stalls. You eventually like find out about his story. This filler quest was, or this filler main event was all right. It had like a nice UI and everything. It was pretty cool. It had like great rewards, all of that stuff, but it didn't progress the main story at all. It really felt like you were taking a bit of a break, just like chillaxing, and there wasn't a huge amount of content to do once this was done. It was probably one of like the least feature rich patches that we've had from like a story perspective. You're seeing here one exploration quest to Mount Firmament, no new echoes except for a Phantom Dreamless, and there's just, you know, it's not looking very crazy over here. They did add some quality of life with the hover droid shooter, which you used during the moon chasing thing, but it was okay. It wasn't like the craziest thing ever. And considering the fact that you can't even do by Moon's Grace right now, a little bit rough. When it came to the events that the patch had, Do Echoid's Dream of Electric Sheep was like the first iteration of co-op that the game had ever had, but this event kind of sucked ass. This event was not very good. It was like a good starting ground for co-op, but in reflection, after seeing what else we've had following, it was probably the worst co-op event we've ever had. 1,000,000%. It was just a bunch of mobs that had no HP, no challenge at all. You could probably do it solo, but you just had to queue up with 2 other players to complete it. They did, however, have the new Elusive Realm, which was sort of like the Carnival in Slumberland. And this Elusive Realm was actually pretty cool. It had like the completely new tile set, a lot of great rewards. And overall, it did not add the replayability feature that we had in some of the future Elusive Realms, but it was a great upgrade to the original one. And so that's why, with some of the events that it had, even with Zhang Liao's quest not being accessible anymore, with all the events and, you know, the minor QL that was in it, I do think it belongs at the bottom of B. I don't think it drops into C or D because, hey, it had the Elusive Realm. This one was really fun. You know, unfortunately, there might have been some people like Gotcha Smack that weren't able to get their Phantom Dreamless because the dates were a little bit wonky, but I think Kuro's made it a lot more clear when the event ends moving forward. So I guess the devs did listen for that one as well. So that's going to be why 1.2 goes into B. It could potentially drop down to top of C, but we'll keep it here for now. Moving on, we've got version 1.3, Two Shores End. And guys, I'm going to be entirely real here. When it comes to the Shore's End, this patch was really good. This was the patch with Shorekeeper. She was one of the only new characters. She was the only new character that released this patch. But boy, oh boy, the story in it was just so good. It's easily an S. The characterization of Shorekeeper, especially like looking back on it, now that it's been a couple of months, I think everybody, most people in the community, think of this quest as like just one of the best ones we've ever had in gacha gaming. There's one particular scene, this part over here. If you did not like this part of the story quest, you just don't like stories. I just think you don't like games, because holy moly, this scene over here where she's just like slow, like this is like her death cutscene. She's like beginning to like fade away, and then she like asks you like what the meaning of love is and all of that stuff, and then she just starts like disappearing, and then you go on the mission to save her. Holy moly. This had to have been one of like the pivotal moments in the story for Wuthering Waves, and it made the entire patch just feel so impactful. And simply the visuals and the environmental design of the Black Shores, is this not one of the best looking things you've ever seen in just gaming as a whole? Isn't this one of literally the best looking environments you've ever seen in a game? I actually can't think of very many things that look better than this. And you can look at this and view this in-game still. And of course, right, you even had this whole scene where you're like going around and like you're like running alongside, like this is Drunk Paimon. You're like running alongside the train. Like this was kind of the moment where I feel like Wuthering Waves transformed from just a gacha game into a game. Like, people viewed it as straight up a game. after this entire sequence, after going through this entire story, because how the production value that we're seeing here was absolutely fucking absurd. Honestly, this level of peak that we've been seeing across like the entire 1.3 quest, I played through this in like one sitting, and it was a ride. It was a journey. And this, in my opinion, kind of really cemented my love for the game. And I feel like so many other people's love for the game. And it's only gotten better with time. It's only aged better with time. I know that there are still a lot of people that are just like, oh, well, the shorekeeper's just gooner waifu bait, blah, blah, blah. There are reasons for that. And if you're somebody, in my opinion, that's just calling her gooner or waifu bait, you weren't paying attention to the story at all. And I think that's more of a self-report on you and your dog shit opinions than the quality of the patch. Because boy, oh boy, this was an amazing fucking patch. Now let's move on. Let's see what some of the big features were. They had Yohu. Nobody gives a shit. Glad she's a 4-star. That wasn't even on banner during Shorekeepers. I'm looking back on it now. This is the worst 4-star character in the fucking game. This is the worst 4-star character in the fucking game. 1,000,000%. Nobody cares about her now. Who cares? We got Shorekeeper coming in, still the best 5-star, the only must-pull character we have. A bunch of new 4-star weapons, which are straight up better than everything else we had before. What else? We had the Encore story quest, which many considered extremely, extremely good. I liked it a lot as well. A bunch of different side quests in the Black Shores region. The entire Black Shores region as a whole, it doesn't look that large on the surface, but there's definitely an underground. And if we just look at what is in the Black Shores, I mean, it looks good, guys. Like this looks good. This is a beautiful looking area. I feel like people don't really factor in how good the environmental design actually was in this spot. This is what it looks like during the day. Then you just decide, oh boy, let's change it to night. Let's see what it looks like now. Oh my. Oh my. That's really something, isn't it? That's really something, isn't it? That's a tacit mark. Just sitting, floating in the fucking sky. The music was also really, really, really fucking good. There's also a Tethys Deep, the area under, the new Fallacy of No Return, the best support echo in the game, and of course, more Wuthering Exploration, and the best event the game has ever had, Fairy Tale's Finale. Fairy Tale's Finale is the best event the game has ever fucking had. They just put in the hologram bosses, their full moveset, and let you work on the hologram fight with 2 other people. It was 1,000,000 fucking % the best event this game has ever had, the best co-op event. I'm baffled that they haven't turned this into like some more of like a permanent game mode of some kind. Like, it was so good, it needs to be permanent. I have never had this much fun playing the game before. Just bosses that are like 1 or 2-shotting you. You're heavily incentivized to run a support, otherwise your team is gonna get mowed down like fucking dogs. And it's just, you just use outro skills, do all this stuff, play pretty much every single character in the game to a pretty high effect. Even if your account wasn't invested, you just hop on your Varina, your Baija, or hell, your Shorekeeper, and then you just go in and you support 2 other bozos as you go and do the fight. I failed a bunch of different runs because my teammates weren't that good, and I dropped the ball as well, but I've also carried some fights where my teammates are just, you know, permanently on like the respawn timer, and then you're just basically doing a solo holo run with your other teammates watching. It was one of the best things the game has ever had. And unfortunately, it's been almost like 5 or 6 months since we've had it. And so hopefully this will have a rerun soon. I think any patch that has this event or something like this event will straight up elevate it to a whole nother level. And when you look at 1.3, knowing all of the stuff that went on into it, the best character in the game releasing, one of the best story quests the game has ever had releasing as well, and the best co-op event, or just really best event the game has ever had too, I think it's an easy yes. I don't think there's really that much you can dispute about it here. It is 1,000,000% an easy yes. So with that, let's move on. 1.4, When the Night Knocks. Oof. This is a rough one to rate. So let's take a look at what was actually in it first. When the Night Knocks felt like there was some stuff that was a little bit missing. There was some stuff that was like really good, but you have to first factor in that 1.4 was a filler patch. There was actually no main story. There was the Camellia companion story, which was really, really, really good. They had the Somnium Labyrinth, and of course, the Elusive Realm as well. It also gave Camellia, who of course was one of the most, and was and still is, one of the most popular characters in the game. So, great character. Lumi is alright, though she should have a 14-second outro skill. Her Camellia signature is kind of just made just for her. And they also introduced pincer maneuver warriors, which was, you know, the baseline for WuWa moving forward. The Elusive Realm, Phantom of Mass, was one of the best Elusive Realms that we have had ever, and we haven't actually seen the Elusive Realm since, so we have to factor that in too. You can clearly see there's not really that much in terms of like both quality of life. There's not that much in terms of, you know, there's like, you can teleport directly to the bosses, you can track collection spots. Actually, there was a decent amount of quality of life in here. Yeah, fast travel to bosses, track collection spots for daily gathering. That was actually really, really, really good. Hidden entrances to certain underground locations. Yeah, there was a lot of great stuff in here. A returnee quest for people that might have quit the game. Double rewards so that you don't have to spend as much time grinding. Actually, shit, there was a lot of quality of life. Now that I'm reading all of these, step-by-step echo upgrading so that +5ing was easier, there was a fucking lot in here. This might be the patch with the second most quality of life, now that I think about it. Holy moly. Yeah, I think that puts this at an easy A. There was unfortunately no main story quests, but there was a great character. There was the Elusive Realm, and a bunch of fucking quality of life, an absurd amount. Quality of life that we still heavily value today. There wasn't a lot that dragged the version down. I would say the Somnium Labyrinth was also, as a main event for the patch, there was a lot of stuff going on and a lot of new features that they're still using to this day. Things like the Dreamscape Odyssey, where you get all of like the different energy, and then you can do like the whole AI controlled teammates doing attacks. I like the experimentation that they did here, and I think it sets like a baseline for what they can do for more of the main events into the future. And the music was also really, really, really good for this main event as a whole. The whole focus on dreams, wish there was more character interactions, but we did get to explore a lot more of older members of the roster, like the Lumis, the Jejas, the Chang Lees, and the Yinlins, right? Characters that we had not seen for months for some of them, and got a bit of a refresher on who they are. And I'm hoping that they have something like the Somnium Labyrinth again, just for like more members of the roster. So yeah, I think they addressed a lot with this one. Not a lot of main story progression, but I think the quality of life in the Elusive Realm alone, and the quality of the unit that they released, I think it was solid enough. Definitely an A for me. I think it definitely exceeded 1.2 a lot. I think it was a fun patch. Definitely a fun patch. I think this is what I'll do. I think we go ahead. We maybe do a little bit of bumping here. Maybe we do this. I think we'll do that just to further differentiate how good 1.1 was, and then how good 1.4 was. This isn't really stuff getting bumped down. This is just adding another tier. This isn't bumping stuff down. This is just adding another tier. I think that's what we'll do, because I think that 1.3 is definitely 2 steps above 1.4. I do think that 1.1 is definitely not as good as 1.3, and 1.0 and 1.2 definitely need to be grouped together. So that's what we'll do. 2.0. Let's move on to it. 2.0 is like, it's easily the best patch the game has ever had. And I think it's just clear enough from the amazing story quest we had with Carlotta, the new weekly boss, and of course, the biggest fucking region expansion the game has ever seen. Like, all of this over here is stuff from 2.0. And when you like look at the size of the map, it's not as big as the 1.0 stuff as a whole, but holy shit, it is so big on its own. And when you look at all of the different features that were in 2.0, this is going to be a really long one. This is going to be an incredibly long one. All Silent Souls can sing. We had Carlotta and Rosia, Carlotta being one of the most well-received limited 5-stars we've ever had with some of the highest sales. We received 2 new outfits, one for free with Sanhua and the other paid with Jinsei, of very, very, very high-quality skins. The ability to fly, new 4-star weapons, which are actually quite decent, And I mean, all like a bunch of great reruns with like Jeja as well as Jinsei. We had an incredible main story quest that was absolutely fantastic, had a ton of different character interactions, incorporated a lot of the feedback that players were looking for, and 2 story quests, which were both pretty good. A shit ton of side quests, an absurd number of them across the entire map, more tutorial quests for the Nightmare Echoes and other components, and fuck, I completely forgot. Might as well just mention it now. The existence of Nightmare Echoes as a whole, making some things like the Tempest Mephis or the Thundering Mephis actually usable fucking things. Because in the past, these were so bad, these were so unbelievably dog shit that people just weren't using certain echoes. And boy, oh boy, adding these into the game and making them spawn in Ridacita, giving more reasons to explore there, and then actually letting people buffing every single older character in the game, simply having this and then simply equipping this and then getting Electro and Liberation damage, this increased the power level of every older character. And it was fantastic. It was amazing. Let's be honest here. It was something that these devs didn't need to do this early on. They could have just been like HSR or ZZZ and been like, hey, you pulled on our 1.0 characters, go fuck yourself, right? Just go fuck yourself. Enjoy your dog shit useless units. We're just gonna keep releasing new units in 2.0 that are just stronger, that are just better in every single way. The WuWa devs could have done that, but they decided to balance the game instead. And Nightmare Echoes was one amazing way that they did that. Shit ton of exploration quests as well. Amazing expansions for Rinascita. Like, Raguna City is absolutely beautiful. It is a little bit small, but it has everything you need. Really easy to find, really easy to get to. And a lot of the story quests actually take place there, and it feels a lot bigger than it actually is due to how those story quests are programmed. There was a fuck ton of events. John Victoria was okay. Pincer Maneuvers 3 and 4 were like a lot easier than what we had before, and a lot of exploration things going on. Unfortunately, there was no new elusive realm, and we haven't gotten the elusive realm since, but there was so much exploration, so much story, so many great things to do in the patch, and of course, so many new fucking echoes to farm and so many new builds to make that even if there was no elusive realm, there wasn't a lot of like crazy events, you still had a lot to do, a lot of stuff to do, and of course all those Nightmare Echoes that I was talking about. There was just an absurd amount of new additions in this patch. Like, look at all of the new quality of life. You had the injured visual effects, which you honestly, unfortunately, only see if you're bad. The new synthesis on the go. I've been loving this. I love not having to teleport to do synthesis and stuff like that. I kind of now want cooking on the go. I fucking despise that I have to like go somewhere to cook. That's kind of a pain in the ass. Your rover is now gender fluid and can switch between them whenever you want. That's awesome for people that might, you know, like certain voice lines or like certain, you know, like pairings of like male main character to like female story quest character, and then doing like that sort of pairing if you want. They got immersion mode so people can get better footage or like have a chip on their shoulder when they're clearing content. The Archive of Melodies is a little bit stupid, so that doesn't really count. Exploration progress. Holy shit. They streamlined exploration absurdly, right? They made it so much easier to find things. They gave like tracking. They basically made it so that you don't even need an interactive map or an interactive tool to find every single thing that you want and get to 100%. I still haven't done it though, because I was mainly going for the tuners. There's that, as well as, of course, limited access to challenges. Letting people actually do all the bosses, level up their characters, farm echoes without actually reaching or spoiling the story. And this was a point of feedback that I had in 1.3, where you couldn't even level up your shorekeeper until you completed the entire 1.3 quest. That was a big miss, not being able to level up or basically use your shorekeeper until you finished the entire 1.3 story quest. And they did away with that entirely here. They also raised the databank to 24 to just give more rewards for free. And then, I mean, a lot of other things when it came to graphics. We're not going to get into like all of this like graphics performance related stuff, but just know this was and still is the best patch the game has ever had. And so now we're in the home stretch. We are now in the home stretch, ladies and gentlemen, and this is the patch that we're currently on. And I am going to be honest, 2.1 is, I think 2.1 is a high B or bottom of A. I think we'll do bottom of A for now. The reason why I'll be putting 2.1 in bottom of A is for a couple of reasons. Then let's look at what's in the patch. So 2.1 is at the bottom of A because the main event that we have, the fishing main event, it's not bad. The 2.1 main event is not bad. It's actually pretty fun if this is something that you're going for. But if you're not somebody that liked the fishing, if you're not somebody that likes doing this sort of thing every single day, doing like the weekly challenges or like grinding out this stuff, you can kind of see which part of the boat I'm on. You can kind of already see we're pretty deep into the patch. We've only got 11 days left, and this is where I am. I'm one of those players that wasn't really a big fan of the fishing. However, there was something else really, really cool released in this patch, and he's on my screen right now. I do believe that 2.1 probably has the best character releases that we've had yet. I'm going to be real here. Brant as a character is so fun to play and performs so many different roles and feels like so good to use that I do think he elevates the quality of the patch as a whole because of his introduction. Phoebe is also a very, very interesting design where she has both her absolution state and her confession state. And I like the idea that there's sort of like this multi-rolled dual purpose character who can either be a main DPS or be a sub DPS and switch those roles on whim. I like that part of the design. We're literally only able to use half of Phoebe right now. And I feel like the introduction of these two characters is enough to elevate the quality of the patch because they're so unique, they're so multi-rolled, and they make the game feel like it has so much more depth just from them existing. And I'd like to think about it as like laying the foundation for the game's future, and I feel like these characters have done exceptionally well in doing that. So that's going to be one of the main focuses here of why it's ranked, I guess, higher, is because of this. They also gave out a really, really good 4-star weapon, Ocean's Gift, for Phoebe. And I like where they're going with this, where they're going to have more and more of these sort of like nice 4-star weapons that will be added to the roster, that'll be added through these main events. And it'll be something that rewards those players, right? That maybe aren't spending as much, that are a bit more free to play. And it just feels like a lot more conscious around their play style, and you know, basically gives them like a nice little bone if they're not spending as much. They also had the companion quest for Brant. They had obviously a lot of like the whole fishing events and even its own exploration quest as well in the new Alvarado Vault. Unfortunately, the Vault Underground is not as exciting as I thought it was going to be. It is like very on the rails. It feels like a giant scenario sphere instead of like a new region. And so it is like a little bit disappointing, but the Riccioli Islands are quite nice. They aren't like as awe-inspiring as, you know, a lot of the other places in 2.1, but hey, it's pretty easy to explore. It's got like a lot of unique spots, and it's mainly geared around the whole fishing event. And they had to do some very intentional things to make the fishing event around this area because, of course, right, you gotta have places to fish. And that means that there can't be that much land in this part of the map. What else did we have in 2.1? Old Man and the Whale. You know, you could have different thoughts on it. Unfortunately, it's not going to be ranked that much higher than bottom of A for me, simply due to the fact that, well, some of the events weren't very good, and there aren't a lot of events in here. Tactical Simulka 3, I don't know if you guys have actually completed it. It is probably the easiest combat event that the game has ever had. And, okay, thank God it expired. Yeah, it was one of the easiest combat events the game has ever had. Pretty much completely effortless to clear. You didn't have to really, like, do anything. You could just use the trial characters and then clear it within, like, literally minutes. I think that having like a higher potential difficulty mode would have made it a bit more exciting. Apex Laguna was kind of like a co-op event where it was like co-op overdash. It was a bit of a miss here. If you didn't start winning in the first 5 seconds, you basically were guaranteed not to get first place. And a bit of a miss here. It was like you would just do it once, get all the rewards, and then not really feel incentivized to ever do it again. And it just wasn't something that was like fun with friends either. Because like I mentioned, right, you would just lose in 5 seconds, and then you might as well just like quit out from there if you're trying to be competitive. Infinite Battle Simulation 2 is okay. I do like how the difficulty ramps up in this event over time. If you actually get to the final stage, let me just show it off. If you actually get to like the final stage, there's a lot that you can do. There's actually a lot of decent stuff that you can do. And I think the best part about this is that you can run this multiple times and add to your point total. And I think that that's one of the ways that they were able to adjust very well for an increased difficulty. You don't have to get the maximum points of 12,000 all in one run. you can get multiple runs of it and then build up and then get all the different event rewards. And so that's one way they were able to increase the difficulty of this event. And it gives a lot of people, right, different ways to play it. You can try to be like super sweaty in one run, take the whole 15 minutes that the event can take, and then grab all the buffs and try to get 12,000. Or you could just speed run the bosses and, speed run the bosses on really, really high difficulty and then build up to 12K that way, right? You just do the bosses and you get the fuck out. And the bosses are very high challenge if you don't have all the different buffs that you get. I'm not sure if it's even possible. Well, this is the thing. You might not think it's possible, but I get to try, and that's pretty cool. So Infinite Battle Simulation, I think, is actually a much better event than people have been giving it credit for. The unfortunate thing is that it unlocked every 2 days, and the first 2, right, were extremely easy and zero challenge, like basically zero challenge to do the first 2 of them. But when you get to like 4 and 5, it does ramp up pretty significantly, and I think they did a decent job. Beyond the Waves, what is this one? Yeah, this is just like, it's like a random reward event like Lolo's. It doesn't really mean anything. It doesn't really mean anything at all. And then Gift of the Blue Water is just the free rewards. They did add the tactical hologram for Hikari, which is probably the hardest fight in the game. So that's like a little bit interesting for us. And of course, a bunch of new echoes, but these new echoes aren't particularly exciting. This one's really good for if you're farming for Brant. That's really the main thing. I would say when it came to the quality of life, they added Echo Suggestion, which is like very good for newer players. Better substat filtering, also good for newer players. And then, of course, Echo Presets, which, in my opinion, you might think I'm just like being stupid here. I feel like Echo Presets weren't actually even needed in this game yet. I feel like Echo Presets, Wuthering Waves was not even at the point with like the size of its roster where Echo Presets felt like they were needed. I don't think people are actually benefiting a massive amount from having them. They're like nice, but when the roster gets to like maybe 30, 40, 50 plus characters, that's when Echo Presets start feeling really needed, right? Where one set is used by like 7 different people. It might be like that for like Moonlit Clouds for you, but at the current moment, there's not like a lot of people, right, that are going to be using a, for example, right? There aren't a lot of people that are going to be using a Tide-Breaking Courage set. There might be a few using Molten Rift. There's not gonna be a lot of people using Eternal Radiance or Midnight Veil. And there's definitely not a lot of people using Frosty Resolve or the Havoc set, right? I'm gonna be honest. It doesn't feel like something that we needed, but it is great that it was added because now it feels like the devs are adding things that are just 1000% being used to streamline the player experience and not even like a fully needed, like desperately needed feature like it is in games like Genshin Impact, ZZZ, or of course, Honkai Star Rail. Then we had the increased storage limit for Backpack in the Echoes category. So for the people that apparently that are just genuinely farming too many Echoes, because let's be honest, you're never going to be able to upgrade them all. So I don't know why people are farming to 3,000. I don't think the devs know why people are farming to 3,000 either, but they just like doing it. This is going to be my take. If you're reaching the 3,000 Echo cap, like you probably should stop playing for a little bit. Like you should genuinely stop playing this game as much every single day. I do think it's like a sign that you need some sort of help or like you need something else to do. I'm going to be entirely real here. I do 1000% judge people that reach the backpack limit. 1,000,000%. Like, what are you doing with all of them? Other than to like just type about how you can't upgrade them all. And that's like, people are like, I hate merging. I never want to merge. I hate merging. And then they complain that they have no echo space. I mean, it's just, now it's 3,000. People are just now going to have the same exact issue where they reach 3,000 and then start complaining about it then too. So maybe we'll get to 4,000 one day. But my take will always be, if you're ever reaching the cap here for echoes, literally go do anything else. Please. Like, it's probably unhealthy at that point. Yeah, everything else when it comes to the quality of life, not too crazy stuff. A lot of like, like the ray tracing, that sort of stuff. Nothing too exciting here. The main quality of life is, of course, the Echo presets. And it's not like they really needed to add more and more stuff here because they've been doing so much in a lot of the prior patches. I do think that the first half of the patch not being that crazy, especially if you didn't like the fishing event, I think that's enough to bump it down to top of B for me. I do think that's enough to bump it down to top of B for me. If you didn't like the fishing event, the first half could have been pretty dry for you. And if you still don't like the fishing event, the second half can feel a little bit dry as well. And so because of that, I think this is the ranking that we're going to go with. 2.0, easily S. 1.3, bottom of S. There's a pretty wide gap between the two. 1.1 is the sole person in A, or the sole patch in A. Then we got 2.1 as the top patch in B, 1.4 as the bottom patch of B, and then 1.0 in C, and then 1.2 at the bottom, with basically 1.2 being the worst patch the game has had. And of course, I do think that 1.2 would go into D if Zhang Liao wasn't given out for free. But Zhang Liao being given out for free kind of helps alleviate a lot of like the issues that were present in the patch. And so because of that, I think this is where we're gonna go. I hope we gave all of the reasoning. We looked at all the different events. I think this is a pretty fair way that we've judged all these different patches. And I'm very excited to see what we're gonna get in version 2.2. So with that, let me know what you all think. Peace.